This is Uncommonly Remarkable, where we discuss the surprising everyday lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. My name is Artis Beatty. I am a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and the conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. As the executive director of the American Optometric Association, today's guest describes himself as hardworking, determined, creative, and very disinclined to give up. Jon is both a team player and a team builder, preferring to stay behind the scenes to get the job done. He's decided to sit down with us today to talk about the importance of the work that the AOA does to educate patients about optometry and eye care, to professionally develop optometrists through immersive educational programs, and to advocate for the profession at the national level. Supported by affiliate associations in all 50 states, the AOA was founded in 1898 and is the leading authority on quality care, representing more than 50,000 doctors of optometry, optometric professionals, and optometry students. In this episode, you'll hear how Jon's lifelong drive to serve has positioned him well to lead this service-based organization, how his affinity for historical trivia makes Washington, D.C. a near-perfect place for him to live, although he'll always be a New Yorker at heart. He'll tell us a little about his family travel adventures, lifeguarding, lobbying, and much, much more. Ladies, gentlemen, all you remarkable people, please help me welcome Jon Hymes to the show. Jon, welcome to the show. It is so fantastic to actually get to sit down with you.
Thank you, Artis. It is a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the chance to have this conversation.
Well, it's a pretty big deal for me because there's two things. One is I always enjoy the chance to get to talk to you. But two, your staff and colleagues said it would be absolutely impossible to get you to come and have a conversation, and look where we are.
Well, they know me so well, and it's definitely not something I typically do. I'd rather talk about any other subject besides myself, but the chance to sit down and be a part of what you've built here is just, again, it's so exciting. And I've enjoyed your podcast so much, the previous episode. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. First, it's hard for me to believe that people actually sit and listen to it. Then when somebody comes back and says, "Oh, I've enjoyed the podcast," or "I enjoyed this episode," it's always very flattering to me because it is definitely it's a treat to be able to sit and talk with people about what makes them tick and the things that they've done. And it's neat to be able to bring some of those things to other people so that they can meet some folks that I've had a chance to spend some time with.
Well, and each episode brings something different, but it always, for me, it always sneaks up on me what is going to be most interesting about it. It's always, in some ways, I think pretty consistently what I least expect. But I come away learning something and certainly understanding things that I wouldn't have otherwise come across. So it's really enjoyable.
That's amazing, Jon, because, when I set out on this journey, one of the things that is very particular to me is I'm curious about everything. And so I want to learn about things, and I want other people to learn about things too, so that you can take things away is amazing, because that's exactly what I wanted to happen when people got to sit down, and which makes me really excited about our conversation, because I'm going to learn so many things about you, Jon Hymes, as the person that I don't know, as well as a lot of the things that you've done professionally that I really have not been aware of. So, before we sat down today, I went and looked at some things. I read some things about you. I've got some questions I'm going to ask you that, full disclosure, no one who sits in your seat gets to hear any questions beforehand. Like, this is a fluid conversation, but I do think you've been hiding some pretty neat stuff in there, sir.
Well, it was quite a streak, but I guess it's over now. So here we go.
So the first thing, though, we should talk a little bit about is what you're doing today, because in the grand scheme of things, and I've not done a lot of industry related podcasts. And part of that is I do spend a lot of time working in optometry and with optometrists. And there are a lot of other things that I do for and with the profession. But at the same time, there's so many things that I do outside of that that I've been dealing with the outside stuff quite frequently. But one of the things that is near and dear to me with optometry has been the AOA, or the American Optometric Association. And so we as an organization, meaning my eye doctor and me personally, work really hard with optometry advocacy and just in general. And being able to work with you and the AOA has been such a privilege. But for listeners who are not familiar with the American Optometric Association, maybe we start there and talk a little bit about what the AOA is and some of the things that the AOA does.
Yeah, the AOA is, well, in short, I like to describe it as a national force for vision and health. Really, that's what the organization is. We are the National Professional Association for Doctors of Optometry. We're a federation of state associations. So we touch every state in the country, and we touch tens of thousands of communities around the country through our member doctors. We have over 40,000. I would say the AOA does four key things that doctors of optometry need and that the public benefits from, and that really improve our healthcare system. Number one, we drive public awareness about doctors of optometry, about eye care, and about the importance of annual eye exams. We are the lead organization that's consistently messaging on that. And, in any landscape, any environment, it's tough to get a message out. We're very creative, and that's what we focus on doing, because that's what our members want and need. And I should just add, we are a doctor-led organization. I'm not a doctor of optometry. We serve our members, and we are led by an elected board of doctors from across the country, very distinguished doctors who commit their time, their knowledge, their passion for caring for their patients, and help guide this organization forward. So in my role as executive director, I execute on that vision.
Don, you said a couple things that I do think are important to just emphasize. The first thing is the work around educating patients on the importance of eye exams and the eye health piece that is so vital to protecting vision. And thinking about that, I'll say globally, but specifically nationally, is something that is very difficult, and getting that message and that education piece out. And so calling that out as kind of the first thing with the AOA, I think is important. And I love the conversation around being doctor led, because I don't know that people are generally aware that of the organizational structure of the AOA. So even doctors of optometry who should be very familiar are not necessarily familiar with that structure, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we in order to be as effective as we are, we need to be very close to what the needs and desires of doctors are and what they're encountering in the patient care environment. So, it's in our DNA to be led by doctors. We have, in addition to the board of trustees that's elected, each state association has elected leadership. We have a core of hundreds of volunteers around the country who help guide us in particular areas. And that's something I know you know well, because you've been a true leader of the profession. So, that is critically important to us and helps us be, what we are is the voice of this profession, and watching out for ways that we can do more to expand access to care and promote quality care.
And I jumped in there and started talking about point one. I never let you get to points two and three and so forth. So
Well, point one's so important. I could go on for a long time, but appreciate that. Yeah. So the public awareness part is so important and critical to us. We also provide practice tools for our member doctors. So everything from evidence-based guidelines to things they need to build and expand their practice, their professional liability insurance, other things like that. We provide, and we develop these guidelines, the evidence-based guidelines, to help inform doctors about the best practices and how to provide the highest quality care. So we're always promoting that to our doctors, because the goal is to have them practice in a way they feel comfortable, they feel supported, and, in a way that is advancing the profession forward, which really has been, the direction of optometry, but I know we'll talk about that shortly. And then, we also provide continuing education. We promote the professional development for our doctors. We have an educational meeting every year, an optometry's meeting. Our state associations have their state meetings, and then we have an online learning platform called iLearn. So, supporting doctors through professional development tools, also very important. And then the fourth part, I'll mention another one I know you're extraordinarily familiar with. You've been in the front lines, is advocacy. We advocate for doctors in every realm possible. Yeah, in the policymaking arena with health plans and vision plans, with the media. What's important to optometry, as we've seen over time, is full recognition for the care and the important role in healthcare that doctors of optometry play, and inclusion in key federal, state health programs and initiatives. So we're always very watchful there. And then, through the work of our state associations, we're expanding optometric scope of practice. Optometry is a tremendous success story in healthcare for the way it is advanced. Really, it's the envy of other professions in how, through changing state law and advancing optometric education, the profession has gone far beyond its roots in vision correction to treating ocular disease, identifying a range of health conditions and health threats through eye exams. So the profession continues to advance, and it's a very compelling story within healthcare, and it's inspiring to be a part of.
Let's stick there for just a second because I do think this is applicable uh, across healthcare professions, but some things are very specific to optometry that if we're talking to a broader audience who may not understand the ins and outs of how healthcare services are delivered and or how professions are really regulated across different states, it could be very helpful to kind of give that background, right? And so when we think about optometry, we have schools and colleges of optometry. There is a national system of education where people are educated in these schools and colleges of optometry. And then there's a national board exam that's given in multiple parts. People take those multiple parts of the exam, and that is, for better lack of better terms, a verification that they've learned the things they're supposed to learn to be able to practice optometry safely. Within the schools and colleges of optometry, there's a curriculum that encompasses a wealth of things, including vision correction, which is really where optometry started and is still kind of core to optometry, as well as healthcare and ocular healthcare as part of the entire curriculum. And so students learn how to deliver prescriptions for glasses and contact lenses and all of the ophthalmic optics, but they spend a large amount of their time understanding physiology and anatomy, understanding pharmacology, the interactions with the body and the eye, in order to be able to treat not only ocular disease and disorders, but also to recognize, sometimes treat, but certainly recommend treatment patterns or referral patterns for those types of ailments that are in the rest of the body, but manifest with some sort of ocular condition that makes them identifiable. And the individual states all have rules that govern what optometrists can do, which is interesting because the education is fairly universal. So everybody learns the same things, but what they practice in the states are different. And so where you were going with the advocacy piece is really the policies and the rules around optometry and the scope of optometry in the variety of states. And I think that gives people a little bit of an envelope to look into and kind of understand why that's important.
That's a great discussion of it, and where the AOA really comes in, because all those things are in place to educate doctors, to prepare them to practice. But where the rubber meets the road is in the law of a particular state, a practice act that really guides how a doctor of optometry can practice. And there's some variance from state to state, but each state reflects the efforts of the AOA and our affiliates in working to expand scope, based on the education and training of doctors of optometry and their capabilities. So working to expand scope and modernize state laws so they reflect the training and background of doctors of optometry.
Expanding scope is paramount for doctors to be able to practice at the level that they've been trained. And really, when we talk about this whole big thing, I think access to care becomes one of those things that is really important and often not considered quite as much, right? So in the grand scheme of things, as the population continues to age, we are seeing lots and lots of people have both ocular and systemic problems that need to be addressed. But they got to be identified before they can be addressed, right? And if you think about the world of diabetes as just an example, the number of people in our population who have who are pre-diabetic, have diabetes, is growing exponentially, and being able to have those patients, those people have access to someone who can tell them that they have a problem and then help them manage that problem is almost it's the key to being able to preserve both health and, in the case of diabetes, vision in a lot of these patients. And so that's a really obvious place to start. But there are all sorts of issues around access that having scope match the education can help reduce some of those access problems.
Absolutely. Access to care is key here. And optometry is an access to care solution because, again, whether it's diabetes, glaucoma, a range of systemic diseases, optometry is able to diagnose these conditions at an early point. And, it's an easy way for patients to access this care that they otherwise wouldn't have. So we have a compelling case that we're able to present to legislatures around the country, and it's been very successful because of the strong track record as an access to care solution.
So as you think about being able to go and work with and speak with legislators, I mean, you've had a wealth of experience in that realm, right? Because as executive director, and we'll talk a little bit about what it is that how your day to day looks today. You are dealing with that at a different level, but you've been a communications director, a staff assistant, like you've been with in that part of the world for quite a while, right?
Right. So I've been with the AOA for almost 20 years now. But prior to that, I did work in the policy and political arena. I was drawn to that. That's kind of who I am. It's something I was always interested in. So, when I was in college, actually even before college, but certainly in college and after college, I was working on political campaigns. I was very active, supporting candidates, and it drew me in. You want to win elections, you want to work on campaigns for a reason because you can have an impact on policy. And I just got more and more involved in that. Even when, the initial jobs I had right out of school weren't necessarily related to that, I found myself spending more and more time volunteering on campaigns, getting to know candidates, working for causes. And I found it to be fascinating and rewarding and exciting. And it led to, opportunities in that area where, I was able to work on Capitol Hill in positions of increasing responsibility over about a decade, where I could, number one, learn a lot about policy issues and hear both sides, and you'd be a filter for information to the members of Congress that I worked for, and work with them and other members to try and affect change and to either persuade agencies or to enact laws.
So I heard someone recently kind of think about time periods in life as seasons. So a season can be a year, a season could be 10 years, a season could for some people be a lifetime. But they were referring to the phases that we all go through. And so, in your season of legislative of action, right, whether that was looking at the time you spent working on campaigns all the way through the time that you spent working at different levels, like, was there something that you took away from that that really has now been instrumental in the work that you do today with the AOA?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot about the process, about how to advocate. I met with a lot of advocates over the years, and I learned a lot about how to build support for a position, how to be a resource that can be helpful in the policymaking process. And the deeper I got into it, the more interesting I thought it was. Certainly, chance to work on Capitol Hill, especially for a 10-year period, it was like a classroom in so many ways to learn about all of the issues that come through Washington. The ability to advocate and the understanding of how to take issues on and bring them full circle, bring them from coming up with an idea, seeing a need for change, or seeing a solution out there that's not being implemented, and walking that through the process. Because one thing about it, and I'm sure this is an enormous, well, I know it's an enormous frustration for people. The process to pass legislation, the process to have an agency take action is hard and uncertain, and it's designed so that only something that is absolutely necessary can be seen through. So you learn a lot about that, and you try to apply that in future roles. It's a very kind of specialized, area of expertise, but it's just something that I was able to dive into and just want to learn more and more about.
It's interesting for me because I've only known you over the course of the last 10 years or so, and so I've met you in DC, and I've been able to spend some time with you in your current role. But there's so many things that you had done before, and it's nice to start to put this picture together. Before we get to sit down, I ask you to tell me a little bit about your background, and there are a couple things that I read that I just got to know. So you were a lifeguard for a while.
I grew up in a seaside community. We're in an ocean beach community just outside of New York City, about a 50-minute train ride, commuter rail
Okay.
ride from Manhattan. And yeah, my first job was being an ocean beach lifeguard in a very established corps of lifeguards with an organization that had great tradition and a lot of pride in caring for the public, and making sure that people who came to our beaches were safe, and the beaches were an enjoyable place to be. For a young kid at that time, you don't realize how much responsibility it is, and maybe until I was a parent, bringing my children to the beach and seeing, a particular rough day, you realize how much responsibility I had at the time. But fortunately, I was with a group of people who took that very seriously. A lot of people ask me, "Did you ever make a rescue?" And we made dozens and dozens of rescues
Really?
there. Yeah, yeah. The ocean can be rough, and a lot of people who would come in from Manhattan for the day, their experience wasn't with the ocean; it was with the pool. And everybody, some people would think it was
Mm,
a big pool, and it most definitely isn't. But it's not the rescues that define how well a lifeguard is doing his job. It's the rescues you actually prevent. It's being
mm.
proactive, and it's a very enjoyable job. It was a great spirit of camaraderie. I have a much better appreciation for it now than I did at the time, and I'll say that because I look back on it and feel like, again, great experience, and learned a lot about working with people and being part of a team, being part of something working towards a larger goal of keeping people safe. So great summer job, great opportunity to grow up by the shore.
Yeah. Well, it all starts to come together though, right? Like there's a singular thread that you start to see. When you first started to describe your lifeguard experience, you didn't start with, I was out making sure people didn't drown. You talked about the service to the community and the service to the people who were going to the beach. And for me, that really dovetails into the service aspect of working in what you do today, right? And so it's always really interesting to kind of think about those things that are just not necessarily obviously connected, but really do have this similar theme or thread. And I find that a lot of people I talk to, you see what they do now and you look at what they did before, and even though at the time those things did not seem very related, they really are, because they are part of kind of the personality, the mindset, the thought process that you've been able to carry through.
Well, I appreciate you looking at it like that, and in a lot of ways, I do as well. I look at it in the way that doctors of optometry. I think the service that our doctors provide is unbelievable. I think that their commitments to their community are inspiring. I get to work with doctors who are so giving of their time for a larger cause, whether it's to make the AOA stronger, whether it's to advance optometry directly through changing state laws and activism at the federal level. It's so inspiring to see. And I can't help but support it. And in a lot of ways, from my position, I kind of envy that. I feel like I'm a little bit professionless. And my profession's hard to describe. Working for an association, working in the policy and political arena, it's a little hard to describe. But being out there on the front lines of care and making people's lives better
Mm.
is such a compelling mission, and it inspires me. It inspires my colleagues who work for the AOA, and we're just true believers in what we're doing to make communities healthier.
That's an amazing thought, and it's also one of those things that I think people, listening, and particularly doctors, really appreciate. People ask me quite often, when I'm not in day-to-day patient care, do I miss it? And one of the things that I truly miss is being able to help people immediately with some problem that they presented and see that that thing is solved for them. And I joke with people quite often that um, you get used to being able to work with a patient and you solve their problem, and they're immensely grateful for all the things that you do. And but in the other work that I do, it's hard to know if people realize that behind the scenes these things are happening on their behalf. And so if you're driven by uh, wanting to know that people appreciate that you're doing things for them, it's it's very difficult to do what you do and a lot of what I do today. Versus if you really like the being able to touch that thing and fix it now and know that you fixed it, which is exactly how I feel when I'm doing direct patient care. And so I gotta tell you, I have to sneak off and see some patients sometimes because it makes it because you really do appreciate being that they appreciate that you're helping them too.
Having that skill and that knowledge, a very wise doctor once said to me, as he kind of transitioned away from his clinical role into working with the AOA on policy matters. He said, I nothing replaces the feeling I get from caring for a patient and the satisfaction of providing quality care. Um, but treating populations and caring for populations and making better health possible for populations is satisfying as well. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like the things that this organization touches, that the AOA and our affiliates touch, we are making a difference in communities and for individuals. So I do take that away from it, and hopefully that is a consistent thread with a younger guy sitting on the shore, or sitting on a chair by the shore, and watching how to keep people out of trouble and on a rough day.
I also hear though that you're the guy to take with you if you're gonna play trivia because you also remember all the things when it comes to specifically movies and historical trivia, huh?
Well, we all have our own unique talents. Some are more useful than others, but yeah, I have an ability to retain some things that make me useful, at least when some trivia questions are being asked. And history, I think very consistent with my interest in policy and politics. I think you need an appreciation of history. I think everybody needs that appreciation. So many lessons to be drawn from that. But that's one area where I'm able to really retain things, and when it can do a trivia team some good, I can spit them out there.
So, um, of when it comes to this trivia stuff, though, it's movies, it's historical things, and you're one of those guys that does a lot of historical site visits and when you travel, right?
I do. I do. I just think there are lessons all around us. Living in the Washington, D.C. area, as I've done for um, almost 30 years now, there's so much history to explore there. And it's one of the things that drew me to Washington, D.C., just understanding the history. When you work in the Capitol, understanding the great discussions and the monumental issues that have been decided there. That
Mm,
was a big part of that job and really brought it to life and just made me want to learn more. But then, in travels with family, I just think it's part of being a person who understands, um, all the things that are going on in our country, our society now. We have to look back and understand what's brought us to this point. And so I'm always looking for lessons there, and there's no shortage of them. And it's anywhere you look, on any historical marker or any historical home or any
yeah.
museum. There's a lot to be drawn from that. So I'm very open to it, always. And it's a challenge sometimes. Sometimes my kids are not as open to it, but they'll learn. They'll be beaten down, and they'll appreciate it over time.
Well, that was the question. It was whether or not others were appreciative of your knowledge base and the fact that you're trying to get them to understand the historical importance, because that's the real trick.
Yeah, it is. I think there's certainly an appreciation for how passionate I am about drawing lessons from the past, and I think over time, that kind of enthusiasm and interest, even if it's not something that is anybody takes up with the same intensity that I do, it will allow my kids to look at things in an informed way, and my friends will at least be understanding of me.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So, we talked a little bit about you being behind the scenes and doing a lot of things that are just not on the forefront. And like you, I like to be behind the scenes on things. I think there is a lot of work to be done to get you to the product that you're looking for, and sometimes the work that you're doing behind is as important as the things that actually come out of it and are in front. So when it comes to your day to day, how are you interacting with the your staff and colleagues? And can you talk a little bit about some of the things that AOA is now directly involved in with the states and how that's working?
Sure. With regard to me, I mean, I think the most formative experiences of my life have involved being a member of a team, and so I've always tried to replicate that from the time I was younger, to now. It's just number one, it's very satisfying to be part of a well organized, well directed team that is accomplishing objectives that it's set out, and so I've always found that very satisfying. And in my work on Capitol Hill, I was able to work for a member of Congress who had a lot of seniority when I first joined his staff, and at a point a few years later, he retired, and I worked for the member of Congress who succeeded him, and went from a very well established office to an office that I was charged with organizing and putting together, and so found it very satisfying to organize that team. And similar to when I joined the AOA, was a time where AOA was reorganizing its approach to advocacy, and I helped construct the team that prepared AOA for the challenges involved in being effective force during consideration of the Affordable Care Act. So the most consequential
Mm.
healthcare legislation of, the last 30 years, really. And we wanted to be effective. We wanted to have outcomes there that benefited the public and our members. And, we were able to have a strong team in place that took those issues on. The pediatric essential benefit that is, one of 10 essential benefits that's set out under the Affordable Care Act. It's a benefit that guarantees children an eye coverage for an eye exam through age 21. Very important piece of legislation and very important recognition that eye health is essential health care. And
Hmm.
that was an important thing that came out of the Affordable Care Act. Other ways that optometry gained recognition there, very important. So, as the AOAs look to do more with our state associations, we've tried to bring that same element of teamwork to it. We're very much optometry is David amidst several Goliaths in healthcare. There are interests that are very powerful, and AOA represents it's not a small profession, but it's not large by the standards of healthcare. So there are many more medical doctors, there are many more dentists. So optometry, really has to be strong and committed and well
Hmm.
organized in order to have an impact. And that's the kind of team approach that we have as an organization between our state associations, our national organization, and the staff team. We're just 86 staff in St. Louis and Washington, D.C., our two offices. But we are mighty in what we're able to take on and accomplish.
And so if we think about all the things that have been accomplished and we start to look forward, John, what's next? What's next for AOA and optometry in your eyes and how you think about it?
Well, I think continuing to advance the profession's role in healthcare, to continue to grow optometry is an access to care solution in healthcare. Um, to continue to build on all the gains in recent years. We touched on earlier that there's variance in scope of practice, and that can be confusing to the public. We certainly would like to see more uniformity, but the system is kind of designed in a way that doesn't guarantee that. So we have to be very strong. In all 50 states, the District of Columbia to ensure that doctors of optometry under the law of their state are able to practice fully, consistent with their education and training. So
Mhm.
that continues to be a challenge, and getting to understand the public to understand, and policymakers and payers to understand, the potential for optometry and the role that doctors play in assuring health.
And so, John, I really think that I mean the work is important, and it's not just important to people who are optometrists, but it really is important to everyone from a healthcare perspective, and being able to provide that access and to be able to provide true health care to go along with vision care is really going to be instrumental in taking care of a growing aging population over time. So the work that is being done is extremely important. And what I hope that people who may listen to this understand is that we don't want to take anything for granted. Our senses are important. Our general health is important. Optometry plays a really important role in protecting that visual sense. But there are a lot of other things that optometry can do in order to make sure you as a person stays healthy and get you into the healthcare system appropriately, making sure you have longevity or extend that long health span that you might have.
I think that's it. It's such a powerful message, and you've been one of the leaders in delivering it to policymakers, and we want to continue that because telling our story, and being the kind of solution we are to some of the challenges, the demographic challenges, and some of the challenges that other professions are facing. The number of providers in several areas are declining, and there are shortages in a number of areas for essential care. And so there's tremendous opportunity and there's tremendous duty for optometry to fulfill its destiny, and that's what we want to see too.
And if a listener wants to learn more about optometry or more about the AOA, does the AOA have a patient or layman facing site for people to understand a little bit more about the profession?
Absolutely. So our site is www.aoa.org, and we have information for patients and those who would be interested in a career in optometry. And I think that doctors really are the best recruiters for optometry. The work is so satisfying and so important that I would encourage you to use our doctor locator to reach out to an AOA member, doctor of optometry, and or contact us directly. We'd be happy to connect anybody with an interest in a career in optometry.
Incredible. I will try to make sure that I link that into the bottom of the episode so people can find you. And Jon, I have to thank you again for spending the time with me. I know you have an extremely busy schedule. There's a lot to do, and the fact that I was able to snag you for a few minutes is incredible. So thank you again.
Art, it's such a pleasure, such an honor to be included in these episodes, and just an honor to work with you on such important causes. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. And so we end another episode. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. I certainly appreciate all your support, so if you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share, the more opportunities we will have to bring you great guests and their remarkable stories. And if you want to know more about the guests, get background information on previous episodes, or just learn a bit more about me and the show, visit us at uncommonlyremarkable.com. Feel free to leave me a comment or a suggestion, and if you want to be featured on the show, click the Contact Us button. Until next time, stay remarkable.